glad
Yeah.
we get to see it. We're good? All right, it is 5:01. Let's call our, what is this, March 31st, 2021 special board meeting to order. Mrs. Morel, let the record reflect that all 7 of us are here and accounted for. Are there any visitor comments? Brian, do you see anybody who's raised a hand online or has anything they would like to say? I'll give it 30 seconds to see if anyone does. If you have any comments or anything to say, ping or however you're supposed to do that online. And this room looks kind of nice in that view. You know, it kind of looks warm and cozy. Yeah, exactly.
I don't see any visitor comments.
All right, thank you. All right, so we will move on to the purpose of this special board meeting, and that is for round 2 of our superintendent search process candidate presentation and interview. We have Mrs. Jennifer Fee with us tonight. She's in the room already. Before we turn it over to her, I want to kind of give a layout of what the plan is here this evening and make a few comments about some things that have happened leading up to today. So Jenny's going to have the floor and the mic here in a couple of minutes and make a presentation to us. We, as the 7 board members, may interrupt her politely and respectfully and ask questions along the way. And then we'll probably have some additional questions when she's complete. We're scheduled for 75 minutes. Whether we take all of that or not will be to be decided. And when that's complete, the board will then discuss, will excuse Jenny and then discuss whether we are interested in hiring her as our superintendent candidate. And that will happen here in open session after she has left the room. I want to say, again, I said this the other couple days ago, I guess that was Saturday. I'm really proud of the board for this process and all the work that was put in. We ran a different process than we did last time, still had Mr. Killips as our consultant, but the board took a little more hands-on approach. And at this point, the 7 of us have spoken with 28 of Jenny's references and folks off that reference list, so we have done our due diligence. We had a chance to obviously interview with her on Saturday for an hour and a half. We've talked to 28 folks after Saturday. I think we've talked to another 14. So even though we chose to bring her back and bring her back alone, we didn't stop doing our diligence and have talked to another, I think it was 14 before and another 14 since. And that's just showing the board's dedication to make sure that we are learning as much about Jenny as we could as we get close to potentially offering her a contract. We also had a 4-hour tour with her, Mrs. Marone and I and Kelly Godesky that was yesterday, right? Lots happened since then. Yesterday morning, spent 4 hours together touring all 5 buildings. We were appreciative of the building principals at all 5 of our buildings taking us on complete tours of each building and leading us through classrooms where there was instruction, in-person instruction happening, as well as virtual instruction, and kind of looking at the guts of some of the buildings. I think it gave Jenny a good opportunity to spend some time with the administrators and interact with some teachers and kids, and certainly Amy and I enjoyed that opportunity to spend that time both with Jenny as well as in our buildings during an active school day. So that was nice. And then Amy and I had the opportunity to have a lunch with Jenny and just sat and chatted while we had our sandwiches for an hour. It was nice to be able to take off our masks and actually see each other's faces. All 3 of us were fully vaccinated and more than 15 days out, so we felt safe doing so. And then Jenny, yesterday afternoon, had a full hour in the boardroom here with the administrative staff of 13, all 13? Pardon? 15. 15 of the administrative staff, and had a Q&A for an hour just so that they had a chance to interact. And all well received. Thank you for putting in a full day yesterday with us. I think it was very helpful to our process and our getting comfortable. I hope it was a good part of your process in getting to know us as well. So that's kind of what's happened to date. I am now going to turn the floor over to you.
All right.
Mrs. Jennifer Fee.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me back. I would say reality hit real quick on Saturday when I got the phone call from Mr. Killips, but I was honored and all in to keep going through the process. And so it's really a pleasure to be here tonight. I do want to thank Barry and Kelly and Amy for the tour that happened the other day. It was a day that confirmed my feeling for St. Joe and that this could be a really good fit in a seamless match from that end. I saw and heard many things that affirmed to me that you kind of walk the talk. You have, you can throw that up there. You have a mission and a vision and a purpose that you articulate in words, but when I walked around the district, I saw those things in action. So I saw that commitment to excellence among your facilities. They're clean, they're safe, they're orderly. You can see there's a standard that's being put out for that. Your staff were of utmost professionals and very skilled. Had the opportunity to enter every building, and the support staff were there, and Kelly calls them the directors of first impressions, and they certainly left a good first impression for me on that end. Then the students were amazing. They were always engaged in any moment they were in. There was no off-task behavior. They were just in the moment, and so if I went up to a child, they would immediately engage with me and be friendly and welcoming. I got to talk to Emma and learn about why she's unique, and she really likes waffles, so we talked about that a little bit. And I talked to some kids who were reflecting on their favorite Magic School Bus adventure, and then there was an AP art student who had a very skilled drawing she was working on. She was working on a portfolio, and I assumed because she was so skilled at that she was pursuing art as a career. However, she actually just said, no, I just do this for my mind and I really enjoy it. So it was great to kind of see that those opportunities are there for kids to round themselves out in any way that they can. So that commitment to excellence was fully in view all day long. And then your vision of inspiring lifelong learners and creating tomorrow's leaders, your administrative team exemplifies lifelong learners. You could tell by the questions they ask that they want to learn more, that they're excited to grow and develop over time, and they want someone that will support that development, but they live that. You can see that in them. And I could see their hunger for having their own capacity built to be leaders. And if we're going to create students who are tomorrow's leaders, we have to create better leaders in our buildings and create people up to that level and build them up. And so I certainly saw that in your administrative team, which was fantastic. And then at one of the elementaries, there was a student who came up to me in the hallway and he said, I'm the leader of the day. And he was having the best day ever. His teacher made him the leader, and he was just having a great day with it. So that was really fun to see too. And then the breadth of opportunities that exist in St. Joe and the course offerings that you have, the technology, the labs, the CTE, the planetarium, all those things really allow students to explore and problem solve and be critical thinkers, and those are the skills that you need to meet those challenges in the future that we don't even know what they are yet, but if they have those skills, and clearly St. Joe's providing that foundation for everyone in that sense. So that was really exciting to see from that end. Now I'm going to turn over to a little exercise that you guys get to participate in. Yeah, I know, you might have to share out. So I would like you to take a moment and just think about one word or one phrase that captures the spirit of St. Joe to you? And then maybe why it is that one word came to your mind. And then I'll just take anyone who wants to share out.
I will start. So if we're talking about St. Joe in general, but it's also the school district, the one word for me is home. I was born and raised here. I'm a St. Joe graduate. So this place gave me my start in life. And I had the opportunity to come back to St. Joe 12 years ago. One of the best things I did was come back here and to get back involved in the community and in the school. This place is special to me for a lot of different reasons. And for anyone to be able to call this home, no matter where they go from here, to know that this is what started them in life, you know, that's our goal, that's our job. So it's home.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I actually chose expanding, and for a similar reason. I was not born here, but I did spend a lot of time here growing up later on, and I see the change. I felt like I finally started to connect and left, you know, to go to school, and even when we came back to raise a family here, there was a whole different feel. It had expanded. There was a growth. There was a change, and so I'm hopeful, and I think that's a exciting idea when we think about expanding, whether, you know, that's people moving in, kids coming from different schools, different opportunities. So that was what came to mind.
Great. Anyone else?
Excellence.
That's my word.
That was mine.
All right, you guys want to make
That first.
it?
Just in so many ways, I think you touched on a number of them right now. And then, you know, as far as our community goes, excellence with Whirlpool here and a host of other companies, a highly rated hospital, excellent places to play, not too far away from here, you know, the beautiful lake and all that it brings. And that's just talking about a few things that aren't related to the school, which I think we can go on all day about. So to me, that's the one word that really pops into mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll layer on top of the word
Okay.
excellence,
I talk enough.
our people here, and that's something I keep coming back to. I think, as a parent of 3 kids in the district at the elementary level, I'm convinced that we have some of the best teachers in the state, and so excellence in terms of our human capital here is something that comes right to the top of mind for me.
And I'll build on what Amy was saying, and my word is dynamic. One that is, I also grew up in a neighboring district, moved away for a number of years. Oh, come on. And once having a family, having the opportunity to come back here, seeing the change, appreciating the change, appreciating the things that are here and expanding here that I had no idea as a kid, really, and having fun introducing my kids into these new findings, and then stepping into this school district from day one has really seen them grow, me grow, the district's growing, so it's a really dynamic place.
You have to do one now.
No, no.
Yeah.
You already
I
said
showed I
ditto.
should tell the board president. You don't have one?
I'll give him a minute to think. I would say commitment. I could see the commitment from teachers, admin staff, the community. As a parent with kids in the district and then getting on the board, it goes so much further than that. When you get to interact more frequently, you get to see the work being done, particularly in 2020. I mean, our entire district took the word commitment to a new level, and I really appreciate that, more so now, being involved in it, you know, being a spectator in many cases, but just appreciating what gets done in this district.
Yeah, it's definitely amazing. Okay. Spirit, you can take a pass.
Excellence.
Excellence.
I can go home and, yeah, you know,
Okay, that's good.
great district. Great,
So,
great.
this is an exercise I actually did with your admin team as well. And I heard they asked me a lot of questions, but I got to ask this one question, which was great. And I heard some similar themes throughout that. But your admin team came up with some of these words. But family was a big one. That was one I heard. I heard home was another one. Roots. Just they want to grow, they want to be a leader, they want to learn, and that just speaks to that vision piece. So those were some of the words that they came up with as well from there. There's actually one word I left off, and that word is awesome. And that word comes from a gentleman named Mr. Eichler. When I asked him what his name was, he told me I could call him Mr. Eichler. And then he said, no, I'm Wes. But Wes works in Upton, and he immediately came up to me and just wanted to tell me all about St. Joe and how great it is and why it's the best place to work. And he was just passionate, and he just embodied everything that I had seen that day. And so awesome just goes across that. So I did get to ask him what his word, and it was awesome. And he seems like an individual, and every school needs someone like that. That's just the cheerleader behind the scenes. And it was fantastic to see Wes, Mr. Eichler, and experience his enthusiasm and passion for the district. So in terms of transition planning, before we get into this whole entry plan idea, I think I want you to just take a moment and think about a time in your life when you had to make a significant change in your life. And I'm not going to ask you to share, so don't be scared. You can think about any time you want. But I want you to think about what that looked like and what that felt like. And did you plan for it? Did you strategize around it? Did you do it alone? Did you do that planning alone? Did you do it with other people? Were you able to adapt it? And did you learn from the experience of it? So just think about that. Because transitions are really momentous occasions in our life. They can be really exciting. You think about when we all take that first day of school picture of our children every year with their backpack on their leg. We have those transitional moments between 5th grade and middle school to high school, and then high school off to college or career or service. And then as adults, we have those same transitions, starting new jobs or moving to a new city or having children or getting married. All those things are momentous occasions, but they can also be times of confusion and uncertainty and anxiety. And unless we are deliberate and thoughtful in planning those transitions, they can be more powerful, and they can be more positive for all of us with that. So my hope is that the board and myself would be able to plan very intentionally so that we can come up with a transition plan into the superintendency that will be positive, but also create that rock solid foundation that will sort of launch us into collaborating together on that end. So what I'm presenting tonight is a plan developed in complete isolation in my kitchen with the Michigan basketball game on the side. And I did a little bit before then, so I wasn't like that last minute. But I was finalizing it then. But that's not my preferred method of operation when I'm developing a plan. I like to have people around me. I like to have voices in the room. We like to share ideas and be able to say this will work and that won't work. So whatever we create tonight, I hope, this is my plan right now, but I hope that if we have the opportunity to work together, we would go back and look at it and say, how do we want to adapt it, refine it, and make it our plan? So I think that's important, that we have that voice in there in the end, if it happens. So a transition plan is really about being thoughtful and getting ready to come into a new position. I really want the plan to allow me to have a full understanding of St. Joe and the district and the community. So it would just be about immersing myself fully in all those different aspects. I would want to create and share my understanding with you and eventually the community and the staff and the students so they could be all a part of that. And then we would use all that information to move forward on our next steps and our priorities. So that's kind of the encompassing view of what a transition plan would look like. So this is a big overview as a summary, and then we can kind of dig into the different pieces. But I did speak to a pre-transition. That is a time period when I think the position starts July 1. But if I were to be fortunate enough to be offered a contract to start, I don't know how my mind wouldn't be. I can't turn my mind off from July 1. So I felt that it would be important to sort of look at that time period between April and June 30. And not to dig in and do the work, because I do have another job. I keep telling my superintendent, I still work here. And so that would just be about getting introductions, gathering information, really furthering my own understanding, and doing some reflection and hearing, and then working on that collaboration around an official transition plan on that end. And then July, August, and September would really focus on looking and listening and learning. It's not about making changes, it's just about coming in and getting a breadth of understanding. And that really hits on 4 areas there: the board relations, our relationship, our governance, how the district leadership operates, and our fiscal and organizational capacity around that. And then how do we connect with the educational and the community engagement and relations, and then school and community engagement as a whole. And then the final piece of the transition plan, which probably technically might look like it should be in the 90 days, but given that students don't return to school until after Labor Day, and access to staff and students is much easier in August and September than it is in July or early August, I felt that it was important to maybe stretch it a little bit so that the staff and the student voice would be part of that, because that's a very important piece and I wouldn't want to miss that out. So the post-transition, the launch and lead phase, is would entail a summary report, working with the Board of Education, setting those goals, getting feedback, and then sharing out to the community at large. So let's look at the pre-transition. The pre-transition phase is really just one where I can focus in on kind of 2 pieces: independently, continuing what I started on February 4th when the job opened up, and just absorbing everything I can on my own, reviewing data, gathering data, all that independent work. And then the other part would be working with the Board of Education, the board president, and Kelly, and looking at the transition plan and really coming up with that piece and parts. That may entail a few other people, the financial aspects of it, and additional contacts as needed. And it would really look like email, telephone, Zoom in this world, because I would still be employed with East Grand Rapids Public Schools and have a loyalty to complete that journey of my life there. And but I certainly have worked with my superintendent. We've talked about flexibility, and hopefully we might be able to arrange something where there's a handful of days that I can come in person and work from that, and some sort of transition days. But that's something we can develop if the opportunity presents itself from there. So that's the pre-transition phase. The actual 90-day phase is really just that look, listen, and learn. I think it's really important to understand the stories and what people believe and understand and want and desire. And so I would go through that period and really, any conversations, anything we talk about, I'm going to be looking with strategic listening, different kinds of listening, making sure that I'm gathering information, that I'm reflecting on it, that I'm trying to understand, seeking understanding. And then at some point we have to kind of be critical and evaluate that, or where does it go? And then the district has had some transitions. There's been some leadership transitions, and those create experiences that are difficult for people, and so just being that empathetic listener through that process as well. And then in all the interactions and the connections that we make with people, I really want to come out so that, similar to how you all ask every candidate the same questions, I want to be able to ask consistent questions across the board. But it's not always question asking or an interview, it's just discerning certain topics and themes and then being able to collect that at the end to see patterns throughout that. So I kind of call those hopes, if you can see the little acronym there. But really, what do we hope to achieve for the children here in our school district in the next 5 or 10 years? And then what opportunities are out there that need our attention, opportunities for improvement, and what do we need to change? And then priorities, what are people seeing as their top priorities that we need to address in the district? And efforts, this is more about that growth and development, but where do you, as a leader or a student or a teacher or a parent, want to direct your efforts? And where do you feel you have the most value, and where do your strengths lie in that? And then the strengths of the district, what can we capitalize on? What can we use as our foundation for improvement and growth? And that. So those things will frame everything that comes after this slide. So before we read through all that, I do want you to think about, I'm going to make you work again. I want you to think about what you would see as the ideal board superintendent relationship. What do you want from that relationship? What qualities, or how do you think we should get there? So if you could answer that question for me, I would love to hear your perspective on that.
I'm happy to talk to that.
Okay?
Well, now you are.
I think that for starters, I'd like an opportunity, and I know that if this comes to fruition, our relationship will be a little more involved than with each board member, as is the nature of the board president and superintendent. But I think for each of the board members to have an opportunity to get to know you personally, and so that during the pre or the 90-day stage, having one-on-ones in order to develop a personal relationship and just kind of have personal shared histories, that then makes it so much easier to work together and get to the hard work. So I think that's an important first step. But from the standpoint of then the working relationship, going from there to team approach, right? You're our leader. We understand our role. We understand we've had a lot of role here recently and a lot of time, but normally we understand our lane and want to be in our lane as the Board of Education and overseeing the hiring of our superintendent and the review of our superintendent and the setting of a vision and approving of budgets. And then we want to get out of the way and let you do your job. I know that I want to be available for whatever you need, and we want to be able to have your back. But that's kind of how I, in a quick overview, see the relationship, if that answers your question.
Yep.
In some way.
Yeah, and I would just even reframe your question a little bit, is it's, for me personally, less what I want out of our relationship and more what I want you to have. I view us as, giving you what you need to be successful and to be 100% effective in your job.
Echo that.
No ditto.
I'm just thinking of one other thing that would be, a real open and fluid communication process, that you're comfortable sharing, everything with us, and we are 7 more eyes and ears in the community that can help make sure that you're hearing what we're hearing, and that it's a two-way street in that, and that it's frequent and open and really good.
Really good. All right, go back on there. So I see some of those same things. I want to be able to establish that positive, productive relationship with you all as well, and having that common vision and those articulated roles and a communication plan. How does that work? And so I can speak to all those pieces and parts. And my intention would be to do exactly that, is to have one-on-one meetings with each of you so that we can develop that shared history and that understanding of one another and where we come from and where we want to go. I would have regular meetings with the board president to be able to maintain open, transparent communication on that end and what's transpiring in the district and all the different aspects. And then working with the board, perhaps in a retreat where we really articulate and develop those norms and expectations for one another in that regard. And then also talk about what our priorities are, and where we want to move forward. And eventually that will lead to revisiting the strategic plan and working through that process as well. So this is an important piece, and I think foundational to the rest of the plan. And I think until you watch a board and a superintendent, anyone who's never been in either of those seats will never understand the intensity and the attention that relationship needs to ensure a successful district. And so that is a priority for me in this seat if I were to fill it. The next piece where I might be able to gather more information and attend to those hopes, as we call them, is working with the district leadership to assess and understand who they are, how we can leverage their strengths, what their desires and goals are, and then also just what is our organizational and fiscal capacity, and where are things along on that end. So that's really going to be involved with meeting with more one-on-one meetings. It can be small group, we can do one-on-one, we can do formal, we can do informal, and really assessing where they are and how everything works and what they need and how can we remove barriers and just furthering that understanding as a whole. So this list of roles certainly is not, that's it, those can expand. I would rely on those individuals to recommend other individuals or groups of individuals that I need to connect with and speak with. So this is just the foundation of that area. And then we want to extend our reach beyond the admin team, beyond the board, out into relationships and connections and understandings with educational groups, but also community groups that have an impact on our school district that we support and they support us. And that will, on the educational side, certainly the foundation, the task force that's been put in place, the associations that we work with in the district, of course, students and student leaders and staff leaders and departments and subject areas and the parent groups and booster groups that all encompass all those. And so those can be, again, in one-on-one, small group, formal, informal, surveys, face-to-face, Zooms, whatever we need to connect and make that connection. And again, that list might expand. On the other side, we have the sort of the external relationships, and I do see wanting to reach out to the Barry and Risa and build a bridge and a connection. With that, we have superintendents all over the area and collaborating with them, and particularly Benton Harbor, our neighbor, and Lakeshore, our neighbor, and maybe tapped into their experienced superintendent who's exiting, as well as Mr. Eating, who's coming on board from the Zealand area and connecting with there, as well as ones beyond the contiguous borders. And then the city, we need to have relationships with the mayor and the city commissioners, the city manager, chief of police, all those different individuals and the business organizations. And really the board is crucial in this. I don't know what I don't know. And like you said, I need you to be the eyes and ears, and you need to talk to this person, and you need to talk to this person, and you should talk to that person, and this group, and that group. And I want to hear all that. But there's a lot of people, so it will be important to manage that process and be organized with that process. Otherwise, there's still a district that needs to be run, and so you have to tend to that at the same time you're tending to all those. So help prioritizing those and making sure we're listening to the people that need to be listened to right at the start, and ones that can wait and we can nurture later.
I'd like to see us have a really strong relationship with our city of St. Joe, and so we have had that in the past, but just really making sure that the school and the city are integrated. As a matter of fact, we're in some townships too where the elementaries are, so same story with them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And Chris, I think the city wants that.
Yeah.
In some of my conversations with some of the leadership, there used to be some sort of a regular meeting between the school board, superintendent, and the leadership, so I think that's good.
we haven't had one of those in a few years now,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So there's certainly a model in East Grand Rapids that we could pull pieces and parts and create something along those lines. And then, before you look at that, I'm gonna go back, you get to play along one more time. So, the last component of the 90-day plan piece is, school and community engagement, and that's the visibility, approachability, accessibility, be everywhere, thing. So I wanna hear from you, if you had to pick one event, school or community, that I have to, that's like a must-attend event, what is it?
There's so many.
I will be busy.
Football game's an easy one.
Back to school nights.
Back to school,
Yeah.
football games,
Back to school nights, I think.
okay. They all happen on the same night?
Right, well, no, we
I hope not.
We try to stay around.
I hope not. Okay, any others?
In what timeframe, sorry?
Yeah.
Is there a
It could be
timeframe?
any time, it's,
Priorities,
throughout the
your
year,
priorities.
where would you say, don't miss this one?
The Ren Baldwin Technology Festival.
The Ren Baldwin Technology Festival, okay? Haven't heard of that one.
You'll be amazed at some of the work our young people do.
Okay.
The first time I went to one, it was mind blowing. The robotics competitions that we host, hopefully again one day, I think those are pretty, if you've never been to one, I mean, I remember the first one I went to, I'm not sure what I was watching, but it was fascinating.
Yes,
I remember talking to you.
Yes.
it is.
The
It is
city
fascinating
events.
to watch.
The city events like the art fair and chalking the block and
Blossom time.
Blossom
Blossom
Time,
Time.
just lots of people in the community you'll be able to meet and greet.
Okay, good insight. Because I had to be pretty general here. What are the events in general that I would be looking to attend and engage with the staff, the students, the families, school-related events from performances, athletic competitions, PTOs, booster meetings, conferences. At the beginning of the year, you have those ice cream socials, I believe, and just being present in those places. And then in the community, like you said, the fairs and the movies in the parks, and those are all great opportunities just to touch points, say hi, they see you out there, they see you engaged, and once you've been in the district and the students know you work at school, they see you outside, they sort of freak out. But that's always an important piece. And then I think a key component of the school community engagement is a transition to take up residency in the city of St. Joe. And my husband moves really slowly on those things, so we might have some transition extended for a while, but I fully intend, and he does too, he's a consultant, so he's very mobile, and we will make that transition over time, but always have a place here and be part of this community, so that's something that's a part of the transition plan as well. We have a lot of stuff in our house.
Yes.
It's an important one. It's a small community.
Be part of the community.
Yeah, and so that's absolutely a priority.
Well, from that respect, because you asked about where you should be, I mean, in the grocery store.
Yep.
I mean, to be honest, that's
Is
where
that
you're
the one
gonna be
up the
seen.
street or the
Yeah.
more?
I mean, that's where you'll be seen, that's where people will see you, and you will be in the community.
Okay. I might have to pull that rule, my husband does all the grocery shopping.
All right.
Great, I don't like.
Or you could just go out to eat a lot.
Well, okay,
I'll just go
Then out-
walk behind you.
out for dinner or for a
Yes.
cup of coffee or whatever that
Absolutely.
might be. Right.
Okay, that sounds good. And then the post-transition phase, that's kind of the launch and lead. And this is the part where we take all that information and we gather it up and we analyze it and synthesize it and really identify those patterns that we see. And I would love to do that with the administrative team and then create a summary report that we would bring to you. And then you would provide feedback on that, and we would sit down and revise and edit and really let that be our guide for our goals and where we want to go and our priorities and our timelines and the next steps. And that next step might be a strategic plan. It might be wait a little longer or go in this direction or that direction, but that's certainly something we develop over time. And then once we've done that and we've identified where we're going, that would be sharing that out to the community. So we're fully transparent in what's transpired, what our understandings are, and what our priorities are on that end. So I would then try to do this with some balance. So first balance would be that pre-transition phase and the head and the heart. So I know I want to make that commitment to East Grand Rapids and finish out that journey there with integrity and with commitment and thoroughly. But also my head will be here. And so just trying to balance that piece. I'll also have to balance work and life and my family. And so this is, these are the 5 brothers that I've referred to, we talked about. So the youngest one is, he's around 35. And the oldest one's around 59, 60, I don't know, somewhere in there. So there's a big range, but those are the 5 brothers. And then my family, my daughter Mackenzie, who's 22, next in a couple weeks. And then Charlie is the glasses, he's a senior in high school, and he'll be 18 in a couple weeks. And then Clayton is the one behind, next to me up there, and he is 20 as well. And then my husband Michael and myself. So definitely have a lot of transitions in their lives as well. Charlie going off to college, Clayton goes to Michigan, but he's been home, so transitioning him back there, and then Mackenzie's graduating but staying in Ann Arbor, and so transitioning her to graduate school. So a lot of things going on there. Our family hadn't been able to be together because of COVID, and our plans for that. So just balancing those things as well will be another priority.
So a balance question for you. There's been talk that this job is 24/7.
Yep, it is.
Families 24/7.
Yep.
That balance is difficult. We're gonna want to talk with you about, and maybe you can even inform us now, about your desires for that communication piece that can occur all day, every day, night and day, whether it's emails or texts or questions or things we hear, we want to get them to you, and be respectful of your time at home, yet make sure that that information gets transmitted timely when it needs to, and that you can be responsive to us to meet our expectations as well. That'll be probably a little feeling out process, but one that, if I'm not sure I framed that in a question, but if you feel like you could respond to that.
This job is 24/7, and you're responsible for a lot of children and a lot of adults throughout every minute of that day. So you're always on in a sense. And when I became a high school principal, I realized that real quick. And so I've learned over time things that need to happen now and things that, okay, I can wait. And sometimes it's hard to wait, like I want to just jump in and I have to pull myself back. Like that can be responded to in a little bit. It's not a now, and just sorting through those things. But I do think it's important for us to have those conversations about what that looks like, and how we make that work together. Absolutely. Where were we there? Okay.
Good job, Brian.
I think that's for the closer, we'll save that one, we have to pull that back up in a little bit, when I get to the last slide, but that's the presentation as a whole, so I'm happy to take more questions or, engage. I hear you have about 52 of them.
Several, it's a few pages.
Let's see.
I wondered if after your first few days with us, if you've gotten any answers to some of those hopes questions that you posed, and whether you're already starting to feel like you're on your way or not yet.
I've seen the S, the strengths, and I've seen so many. And the one I'm really excited about is the eagerness and for the administrative team to move forward and to really embrace and be developed and take ownership and have that support for that out. So I think that's a great strength, that desire and that eagerness and that willingness to engage is a wonderful strength to leverage. So that comes to mind right away. Certainly the DEI issues in that are opportunities. That's an incredible opportunity for us to reach all kids. And we should always be striving for improvement in that area. So that comes to my mind as well. And then priorities fit around those opportunities. You gotta, where you can improve and where you can access all kids, that's where your priorities need to be. So those are some things that come to mind when I think about that.
Okay, thank you.
I had a quick question.
I
really-
This is a free-for-all.
Yeah.
Just ask away.
So thank you for that really clear presentation and not overly long presentation. You can't know everything yet, so thank you for that. That was great. In the phases that you've laid out for your transition, I think I really appreciate the acknowledgement that you really need to get information and we need to find out how to extract the right information. We just filled out, our Berry and Risa just sent out a climate and culture survey for all schools in the Berry and Risa purview. So while that's an efficient way, if it's meant to address, all students everywhere, the questions I found weren't quite crafted specifically for either our district or our buildings, by building. And I think that finding the right information in the right way needs a lot of strategy behind it and a lot of thoughtfulness. It also needs to be really timely, where we don't sort of get the nice fog, soft effect of after summer, everything, sort of looks rosy after you've had a great summer and you sort of forgot the nitty gritties of the school year. And so I appreciate you wanting to take a quick initiative on that. So what I'm finally getting around to asking you now is how would you, and have you before, crafted those kinds of surveys where you really are trying to cast a large net rather than, the one-on-ones are super important obviously, but also the wide net is important as well. What have you done or what would you like to do to get that input in a timely way?
Did my superintendent ask you to ask that question?
No.
We did that pretty vigorously. We embarked on our strategic plan most recently.
Okay.
We gathered surveys, climate culture surveys, DEI surveys, SEL surveys, and we poured through questions. What would they look like? What would we look like? And that's great to do, but what she really forced me to do, and I saw great value in it, was we gotta talk to the students and we gotta talk to the parents and ask them, what do you wanna be asked? They're the users. They need to be design that survey with us so that we get to what they see are their needs. So we set up focus groups and she sat in those and I accompanied her and we asked kids, middle school kids, I think we went to 5th grade maybe. What is it that you wanna know? What are your concerns? What are your needs? And we did that with parent groups as well. And then we were able to craft questions around that. And I know one of the questions that we would have never asked that came out of that was about microaggressions in terms of race or gender identity. And it was pretty revealing. And it's some work that needs to be done around that, but that we would have never asked about that directly had we not had that student voice and student input. So she really set that standard for me, and I would want to replicate that model out.
Thank you.
Jenny, you asked a question in your interview that I answered about the foundation, the school foundation. So I'm gonna turn around on you
Okay.
and say, how do you envision your role with our school foundation? And also, other than the obvious money, what is it that the foundation can do to help you in your role?
So I think my role is to ensure that the priorities of the district are reflected in how they give and allocate their resources. Because if they don't have intention and direction and they're just giving them to pet projects, that's not helping our cause and moving us forward. So I think really strong communication these are our priorities. So when you get grant requests or you're soliciting money from individuals for specific projects, those align with our vision and our priorities and our strategic plan. So that would be having a communication and dialogue. And I don't know how the superintendent's role is in terms of sitting in on foundation board meetings, but that would be an important component. Sometimes grants come to the table and parents aren't educators and they don't understand what something is or what impact it could have. And so being able to facilitate that background information, and if I'm not the one implementing it, pulling that person in who could provide that insight to them. So I see that being a role and a collaboration from that end.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What are you most worried about? And it can't be the work-life balance.
Because you already told us.
If you wanna list three, it can be three, but it can't be one or two.
Well, in all honesty,
Yeah,
you always have self-doubt. You always have self-doubt. I know I have had a lot of experiences that I can pull from, and I can trust myself to respond. I know when a crisis comes up, and crises will come up, they just do. We're a school, and we deal with people, and they happen. And I just know in a crisis, I just go into this mode, and I put the crisis in the middle of the paper, and I draw out every single person that's impacted, and how we have to communicate and deal with all those, and I know I can do that like that. And I will handle a crisis in that way, and I will pull in everyone we need for that, and that's a now thing. But there's others, those big projects. DEI is scary. It's an issue that's really tenuous, and can we pull all those coalitions together and develop that? So you always have that self-doubt, but then I know I have had experiences and skills that I can pull from and rely on, and there's people around that will support that. Do I worry about that? Yes, but then I can fall back on that.
That led nicely to my question, because I got lots of time with you yesterday.
Before you answer that question, you may have some self-doubt, but I have no doubt that you're ready for this job.
Well, and I'll add to that, the 55 people that we talked to also have no
Right.
self-doubt.
it was only 28.
You heard
I kept
it
waiting
all.
for like one person to tell us this one thing, and they're like, she's a rock star.
We just kept saying, we promise we're not digging for dirt.
Yeah.
I know.
Trying to make sure it's a good fit.
Well, I hope I can hold all those expectations. That's, like someone needed to say something wrong, so you're
Oh,
like,
they
well,
just
at least
call
she
you
didn't do that. So,
Sorry, Dean.
Well, that's totally fine. I appreciate that answer, because I think it's true of all of us. I think it's hard for us, and it's not the thing you're supposed to say, and I really respect that. So in that vein, what do you think your legacy is that you leave with a position behind you should you come to us?
in my opening statement in the first interview, I talked about impacting systems and how when you impact a system, you impact all kids and not just a single kid or student or child, whatever it may be. And so I hope that when I leave that we've left systems in place that will last beyond any of us sitting at this table. And systems need to change over time and adapt, but at least those are in place, and so we're not relying on randomness in terms of impacting kids. So I want a legacy that has all the things that we did and worked on remain in place even when we're not here.
Great, thank you.
What would you say is your greatest strength? Just one.
Hold me to the one word.
Yeah.
What did the 28 people say? I think I'm pretty good at reading people, and I think I meet people where they're at. And I can, it doesn't matter if they're the President of the United States or there's someone I've never met before, and I don't have any idea who they are. I can adapt and adjust, not in a evil way, but just, I sort of can read them and really work with a lot of different people and a lot of range of people. So that kind of ability to read people and to be flexible and adaptable in how we interact. And I just think that's part of the listening and with empathy and understanding people's situations.
That'll lead into a topic that's burning in my mind. During the interview process, I had asked, well, I'd acknowledged that we have talented and experienced leaders in our district and how you're gonna help shape them with your leadership style. And I think your response included something along the lines of it was one of the favorite aspects of your job. So again, I'll acknowledge that we have a very talented and experienced group of administrative leaders who you've met with. How do you see your role in helping continue to shape that group?
First of all, it starts, the same place it starts with you and I, is a relationship, professional and personal, and learning about them and who they are and what their strengths are. Because they all have a strength. I saw that very clearly in my visit yesterday. I can tell the different strengths of different people right off the bat. Not that I can, that's it, but
Sure.
that was my first impression. And I think leveraging those strengths and sitting down with them and say, where do you want to go? What is your goal, ultimately, personally and professionally? And how can I help you with that? What would help you build to that? I have done that with my superintendents, and they've asked me, do you want to be a superintendent? And I said, yes, I do. And they said, what can we do to help you get there? And it was just about opportunities of engaging in what the superintendent does. So if there's a building administrator who wants to become a central office administrator, then I want to provide those opportunities, those leadership pieces where they're doing parts of the job and they can get exposure and understand that.
That's really exciting. I think if the administrators heard you say that, I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but I know they all are so good at what they want to, you know, at what they do, that they want to continue to grow professionally, and so that's wonderful.
Jenny, one of the references I called on, gave me an answer to this, but I guess I want to ask you this question. So,
Better I
in,
catch it.
yeah, in this role,
For our
there will
audience.
be some contract negotiations over time. So what is your approach? How do you handle those type of communications in conversations?
Contract negotiations can be really simple and they can be really complicated. We had to negotiate a contract in the middle of COVID, in the middle of a budget situation that we had no idea what the budget was. And that created a great deal of anxiety, and it wasn't real smooth in the beginning. But I think our approach to negotiations is that we're a team. We ultimately have the same goal. We want to support our staff, who are very valuable, our most valuable resource, and we want to support our students to make sure that they have a great education. And so we need to bring those together. That's the ultimate goal. How we get there is sometimes different. We have different visions. But when you approach negotiations, every word in that contract, almost every word, equates to a dollar sign. And so you really have to understand when you put forth a proposal, what the long-term and short-term impact of that proposal is. Yes, I want to give every teacher a 2% raise. I absolutely do. But I also know that in 3 years, we will have a deficit of X dollars if we do that over time. Or if we change the salary scale and remove lanes, what's going to happen in the long term when this chunk of our staff reaches a different salary lane? Are we going to be able to afford it? So we have to be able to afford what's in there. And so I think really understanding the financials behind those different proposals is important. And we have to work with the same information. The association does and we do. If they have a different understanding of what a step costs or what a percent costs than we do, we're never going to reach the same place. We have done, I find that the sidebar is the most effective place to make progress. Negotiations are very strange and awkward and very formal, pass these proposals back, and there's not a lot of dialogue at the table, but if you can get in the sidebar, and with our association president, that's where we've been most productive together, because you can really just talk honestly, and really get to, what is it you need, what do you want, and can we do this, can we do that, which is harder to do at the whole table. So, those are some experience I've had, doing that, so, and some have just been renewal.
Describe who was at that table, like what,
The
what's.
sidebar or the?
No, the bigger table,
Uh-huh.
in your experience, because obviously you've been in EGR for a long time, so just kind of describe that team and whether you would envision a similar approach here or a different approach.
Mhm. I was fortunate that the superintendents that I worked with, we worked together to frame a recommendation to the board about where the parameters of the negotiation should go. That don't go higher than this, don't go over here, don't go over here, this is the box you have to work in. And then the superintendent opened the negotiations and had conversations with the table, but then stayed in the background. And the assistant superintendent of finance and myself sort of ran the negotiations at the table. But the superintendent was always present in the background, and we could go in and get information and do those pieces, and then usually they close that out. So always aware, always part of that, but maybe in the distance and giving that authority from the board to her, to us.
Do you have any views on how you might approach negotiations and negotiation team going forward? I mean, that's your experience, but
Yeah,
have you thought about that?
I really think it depends on the context of the administrators we have in place, who the representatives are, the association, your feelings about that as well. I was in a negotiation where we had a lawyer the whole time. And that was an intense negotiation, but we felt we needed that support and that guidance. But then others, we haven't had that. So I think it's really the context of what you're working with, the people and the circumstances at hand. You can be done, that's good.
Yeah, we're getting close, we're in an hour and a
All
few
right, we're
minutes,
good.
so
Okay.
everybody look at your notes, if you got any burning question you wanna ask, we can do that.
Maybe a quick one,
Yeah.
you can answer quickly. I had a sort of roundabout opportunity to talk to a classmate of yours at MSU.
Oh,
And she definitely said that you are someone who is great to have in the group project setting, you know?
not recently, like last night. I was not a good group member last night.
Generally speaking,
Yeah.
she was really, she spoke highly of your contributions. So, in your decision to pursue this degree, and can you tell us just a little bit more about why you decided to, and what you hope to gain from this process?
Good.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to pursue that level of education. Personally, I want to model for my children that lifelong learning and that pursuit of education. And so that was one just kind of personal feeling. I waited a long time, and that's kind of an example of trying to find that balance. I knew I didn't have space in my life to do that when I had little children. I was running around and going crazy, and they were at football games with me, and I had wonderful support from my husband to be able to do that, but there just wasn't space. And so once I had 2 children off to college, I knew I had that space, and the other one had a driver's license, so I was good. And I could feel that space in my life, like I could feel it a little bit, and I said, I think I have time to do this. And then in terms of why I wanted to do it professionally, is Michigan State has a unique program, because it is a cohort program, so you work with those 30, or I guess it's 18 of us, I think, throughout the 3-year process. And it is very collaborative, but it also has a social justice lens to everything it does. And so I wanted to pull those pieces in to sort of my repertoire of learning. And so that was really why I chose to go there. I'm almost done with the coursework, and then we do a collaborative dissertation. So that process will embark this summer, so that's another balance that I I'm gonna have to find time and energy, but, a year from now, it should be done, and, you cannot call me Dr. Fee.
Is that gonna go in the contract? No
Right,
calling.
so, it's been sometimes you go through those things just to get the degree, but as I've worked through the process, there are definitely things that I've applied, some lenses I've used to make decisions and understand things that are happening. School finance class right now is very applicable.
Thanks.
Yep,
Did you happen to have a chance to read Bell?
I read a little Bell last night, yep.
What'd you think?
It amazes me how we talk about social emotional learning and DEI as two separate things. They're exactly the same thing, so I don't understand why they're controversial. That's what I thought.
Agreed. Any other questions, folks?
No.
Thank you, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any closing remarks you would like to make? I do now remember there was a last slide.
There was.
Brian, would you put up the last
Yeah,
slide?
last slide, so.
Is this gonna be another tearjerker?
It might be, actually. All right, so when I was 5, I lost my father in an automobile accident suddenly. And at the time of his passing, I was passed along at some point in my life this poem that has actually been part of every major transition in my life. It started with my high school graduation as class president with someone Amy talked to. We were co-presidents. We tied twice, so we were just like, let's just do it together. And so we spoke at our high school graduation, and that yellow copy there is actually the pieces of paper that went inside every diploma that the students had. So that was the first time that poem became part of my life. And then the other transitions are certainly at times when job changes, weddings, children being born. It is, I think there's a lot of really important words here, and you talked about legacy, and I think this is the legacy that I've tried to instill at places that I've gone, is just to ensure that we leave a legacy that's strong and wide and firm, because everyone else follows behind us, and they can still benefit from the work that we did. And the bridge just seemed an appropriate analogy or metaphor or whatever you want to call it for the work that needs to be done in this district in terms of the bridges that need to be rebuilt and the bridges that need to be extended, and along all sorts of different areas and issues. And so I hope I can bring that perspective and lens and drive and motivation to this job and to St. Joe. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other comments before we excuse Jenny, other than great thanks?
Thank you so
Appreciate the
much.
opportunity to chat with you another hour.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Killips, I will be in touch with you through Mr. Killips
Okay.
in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for all your time.
Thank
and
you.
effort.
Thank you, Jenny.
Greatly appreciate it.
Great,
Everything's
thank
all set up.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
In- Where's spring break?
Yeah.
Where's she going? Her family's going to Mexico. Okay, so discussion, we will focus this discussion on whether we wish to authorize me to extend or enter into contract negotiations with Jenny Fee. So first is whether or not we are in agreement that that's where we want to go, if there's any discussion about that. If not, if there's no discussion, we're just in agreement, we can entertain a motion pretty quickly.
Well, I just want to go on public record to say that I'm even more impressed after meeting with her for a second time. You know, she's so well thought out, so well researched, and all of the things that at least I heard from her peers, you know, it was interesting, I spoke to a student of hers. I don't know if you guys remember in the application, she spoke of Dove chocolates on her desk and this girl Liza that would come into, I spoke to Liza. And, it was really just interesting and reiterated what we've heard from her peers, but from a student's perspective of what an outstanding educator and what an influence she had as a building principal. You know, that's sometimes can be a tough way to influence kids as a building principal as opposed to a teacher. But just 2 times that we've met with her and I've been extremely impressed. And even her closing remarks, I mean, that is exactly what
Yeah.
our district needs.
Great home.
There isn't anything that we've heard from the recent reference checks or the tour the other day or our admin team that would lead us to think otherwise than to extend an offer to her, question mark?
100%. I mean, Amy and I had an opportunity with her for literally 5 hours.
It's hard to hide for 5 hours.
Yeah, and we did a lot of watching. Amy and I did a lot of watching, walking behind and watching her interact with the administrators and teachers and students. We also obviously interacted with her ourselves. No doubt, she is as solid as advertised and as the references have said.
Nothing I've heard or seen gives me any hesitancy.
I will say it was interesting when I was talking to a sort of off the books reference and, but from within the district. And, I asked if I were to, talk to someone who might have the most unvarnished, review of Jenny, who might I, you know, who was at that list, maybe who I should talk to. That person was already on her provided reference list. So I think that speaks highly
That's interesting.
to Jenny as a professional, to put forth even someone who there might have been challenges, just going through challenging times with, not having challenges with necessarily, but going through challenging times with, and to put that forward for us, I think speaks volumes of the kind of person that she is and the kind of professional she is. So no reservations here.
But it's the person I talked to,
It is.
and there was no hesitancy on with her reference. So it is the one that negotiated 7
Yeah.
Contracts successfully.
Yeah, and I spoke with someone who was a part of that process, because we talked about conflict and challenges, and we had a great question from our community pool that addressed that, and I thought, Mr. Dyer, you did that very well, as far as, you know, even in conflict or disagreement, those people felt respected and an integral part of the solution. And I think that is what we're looking for in the transparency, the willingness to collaborate, and the integrity that Mrs. Spee brings to the situation.
I think the messaging just keeps carrying forward. So I spoke to a parent who was a reference of hers, and his comment was, she's so incredibly approachable, but can command the room when she needs to. And I found that interesting because it was before interviews, of course, and I think she can certainly deliver a message on point, but more importantly, the manner in which she delivers the message, it's easy to hear it, absorb it, act on it, whatever the stakeholder is in the community. And I find that essential. I think that feedback from him was probably the best that I got out of references we talked to. And I think she exhibited that twice with us. So, 0 reservations.
Mr. Brewer, that reminded me of something that someone I know in the East Grand Rapids area reached out to, and she addressed, which was, she did such an amazing job of being a strong leader when she was a building principal, at the same time having children in the district, which we know that's a really challenging
That's
thing,
hard.
and to walk that balance and deal with some crises that happened and do that with grace is very difficult. So I appreciate that, again, that integrity, the ability to do that.
All right.
So from what I've heard, I'm willing to make a motion that you are, you as the president are directed by us to
Not authorized, but directed.
You are authorized by us to enter into negotiations with Jenny Fee.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That would be a 7-0 vote authorizing me to enter into contract negotiations with Mrs. Fee. I'm very excited to begin that process. All right, before we go to closed session, we do have an other. Amy, you want to talk about where we were in our Brave Talk at a board level and how and when we might get restarted?
So I was interacting with Mary from the Brave Talks program. She said they are available to, whether our comfort level is in Zoom or in person, that we could resume our Brave Talks this spring. And she thought it also wise to include our superintendent. We were going into our third session, and as I mentioned with Barry and I spoke, we thought catching up, us kind of revisiting that and evaluating kind of where we were all, if we needed to view anything else, and then should we be able to negotiate an excellent contract with Mrs. Fee, we will invite her through that process with us. So just be looking at your calendars in general. I'll send some additional information. Just wanted to put that out there for everyone.
We got something today, like an invite or something, was that?
That's not related,
Related to that?
it's just that you're in the program and there's different opportunities to learn. So
Oh.
if you're interested, you may take that opportunity to do so.
I put it on. All right, any other? Hearing none, I'd like a motion to meet in closed session to discuss a legal opinion pursuant to section 8H of the Open Meetings Act. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer.
Thank you, and a roll call vote. Mr. Weir was the
Thank you.
second, and a
Your
roll call
voice
vote.
there. Mr. Coneybear,
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Dyer.
Yes.
Mrs. Marone, yes. Mrs. Whitecamp.
Yes.
Mr. Weir.
Yes.
Mr. Wright.
Yes.
7 yes, motion passes.
Great, so everybody out there, thanks for participating and being online. Hope you're as excited for the opportunity for Mrs. Fee to be our next superintendent as the board is, and we'll certainly announce when we have a contract negotiated, if we get there. So we're gonna sign off. We will come back out of executive session in a little bit, just to say goodnight, but there will be no more action of the board today. So Brian, I'll let you shut that down. my son wrote
Okay.
an article in there on Drake.
Very good.
Okay, we are back in regular session. It is 7:03. Any other business that we need to take care of? Anybody have any thoughts that they have any other? I didn't think so, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Weir.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stankin.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.